Breaking tonight. After a US-linked oil tanker was seized near Venezuelan waters, Donald Trump issued a direct warning, saying the situation had gone too far and could not continue. At 2:26 a.m. local time inside Venezuela's Air Defense Command Center, the night shifted from routine to alarm. A weak radar return appeared 42 miles north of La Guaira, blinking in and out like background noise. Operators leaned closer. As the system refined the track, the numbers locked in. Speed steady at 480 knots, altitude 48,000 feet, heading due south. No identification, no radio call. Instead of turning away, the aircraft kept coming. Seconds later, a second radar trace emerged, sliding into position directly behind the first. Same speed, same altitude, matched movement, two aircraft flying as a pair. Alert tones rose across the room. This was no civilian traffic. This was not a mistake. Screens tightened as distance dropped fast. Defense crews were notified. Systems shifted to standby. Every eye stayed on the closing numbers. 35 miles. 30. The room filled with sharp beeps and quiet voices. No one spoke loudly. Everyone understood what this meant. This was a direct challenge. Venezuela was being tested right after Washington's warning. And as the two unknown aircraft pushed closer without changing course, one thing became clear. Whoever was flying them was not trying to hide the message. If you want to follow this confrontation as it unfolds step by step, make sure you're subscribed. What was happening on those radar screens was not just another late-night alert. The location mattered. The airspace north of La Guaira sits next to one of the most sensitive corridors in the Caribbean. It is where oil shipments, cargo routes, and coastal traffic pass within a narrow band of water and sky. Every radar in the region watches this zone constantly. Nothing moves here without being noticed. Just hours earlier, the crisis had already escalated at sea. A Venezuelan patrol vessel had detained an oil tanker linked to a US company. Washington called it a hostile act. Caracas said it was lawful enforcement, words hard and fast on both sides. When warnings are issued at that level, militaries listen closely. That is why the timing of these radar contacts mattered so much. They did not appear days later. They appeared the same night. From a tactical view, this looked deliberate. Two aircraft flying together, holding perfect speed and altitude, refusing to identify themselves, and pressing toward defended airspace. That is how pressure is applied without firing a shot. It forces the other side to activate defenses, reveal reaction time, and make decisions under stress. For the Venezuelan crews in that room, this was not politics, it was personal. Every mile that closed meant fewer seconds to respond. A wrong call could trigger missiles. A delayed call could expose the country's defenses. Families along the coast heard warning sirens and knew something serious was unfolding, even if they did not know what. For the US, this was about more than one tanker. This corridor affects trade, energy flow, and regional stability. Any disruption sends ripples far beyond Venezuela. That is why these aircraft mattered. They were not just dots on a screen. They were a signal about control, reach, and resolve. And here is the question at the heart of it. If you were watching those radar tracks close in, would you hold fire or prepare to strike? Press 1 if you think Venezuela should have stood firm, or 9 if you think restraint was the only smart move, and subscribe to stay with us as this confrontation continues. The first response did not begin with missiles. It began with hands moving faster and voices dropping lower. Inside the Air Defense Center, operators switched from routine monitoring to active tracking. The radar picture sharpened, then slipped again. One moment the lead contact was clear. The next, it faded like static. An operator adjusted the filter, tightened the range, and tried again. The lock held for barely a second before breaking. That was enough to raise concern across the room. At 28 miles, the system classified both tracks as unknown military aircraft. Defense crews were alerted and told to stand by. Outside, personnel moved toward their stations with practiced speed. No one was running. No one was calm either. This was the window where small decisions matter. Back on the screens, the two aircraft stayed perfectly aligned. Speed never changed. Altitude never drifted. That alone told the operators they were not dealing with normal patrol planes. When one aircraft shifted slightly higher while the other held level, the tracking solution became unstable again. The computer tried to separate them, failed, then merged them back into a single return. A technician spoke quietly, pointing at the display. The signal strength was wrong. Too weak for the distance, too smooth for conventional aircraft. Another operator called out the closing range, 25 miles. Command asked for confirmation. Are they turning away? The answer was immediate. No. Still heading south, still closing. At that moment, the first serious tactical choice appeared. Air defense systems were powered and ready, but firing required authorization. The rules were clear: no launch without identification. The problem was simple and dangerous at the same time. Identification was not coming. At 22 miles, the radar briefly showed a wide, flat outline before dropping again. The room went silent for half a second. Everyone had seen it. No one said the word out loud yet. The officer in charge ordered another tracking attempt, manual mode this time. An operator took control, following the faint return by hand. His breathing slowed as he tried to keep the cursor steady. The target slid out of the box again. Lock lost. Still no transponder, someone said. Outside, missile crews waited for a command that did not come. Inside, the distance kept shrinking. 20 miles. 19. This was no longer a warning. This was a test. And the next few seconds would decide how far it went. As the distance dropped below 19 miles, the tension spiked. The two aircraft did not speed up or slow down. Their movement stayed smooth and controlled, which made the situation even more unsettling inside the radar room. One aircraft climbed slightly while the second held level. That small vertical split was enough to disrupt tracking again. The radar tried to follow both targets, lost one, then grabbed it back. Warning tones rose and fell in quick cycles. Operators knew this was not random. The aircraft were shaping what the system could see. In air defense, even a small angle change can break a lock, the officer said quietly. The message was clear. These aircraft were testing the limits. At 17 miles, the system automatically flagged the tracks as a direct threat. The display shifted from yellow to red. Outside, missile crews checked their panels again and waited beside launch tubes glowing under floodlights. Everything was ready, but no command had been given. Then, the radar behaved in a way few had seen live. The two returns split briefly, appeared as more than two, then snapped back into a single pair. The system failed to classify it and reset. A technician muttered that this looked like deliberate decoy behavior. Distance updates came faster now. 16 miles, 15. At this range, reaction time nearly disappears. Inside the room, no one raised their voice. Every word mattered. The officer reported up the chain. 2 unidentified military aircraft. Coordinated movement. No radio contact. Difficulty maintaining lock. The response came back immediately. Hold fire. Await identification. The order hung in the air. On the screen, the lead aircraft made a slight turn. The second followed perfectly. The radar lost both for a moment, then recovered them again, even closer. This was the line between control and escalation. Fire too soon and the situation explodes. Wait too long and control slips away. If you were watching those numbers count down with no answers coming, what would you do? Press 1 if you think Venezuela should have prepared to fire, or 9 if restraint was the smarter move. Subscribe now, because the next moments push this standoff to the edge. What the Venezuelan crews did not realize yet was that the balance of control had already shifted, and it was happening quietly on their own screens. As the two aircraft continued to close, the radar picture began to behave strangely. The returns did not simply fade in and out. They stretched, flattened, then narrowed again, as if the shape itself was unstable. Operators checked their settings, then checked them again. Nothing was wrong with the equipment. At 14 miles, the main return briefly split into 2 points, then snapped back into one. This was not weather or background noise. Someone was influencing how the radar saw the sky. The realization spread through the room slowly, not as panic, but as unease. An officer leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. "They're forcing the system to choose. Either follow a false signal or lose the real one. Either way, the picture was being distorted." Outside, missile crews stood ready, eyes scanning an empty sky. No sound, no lights, nothing visible. Only the countdown coming from inside. Then the second aircraft dropped slightly in altitude while the first stayed level. That small separation was enough to confuse tracking again. For the first time, several operators shared the same thought. These aircraft were not rushing in. They were testing the defenses. At 13 miles, the radar flashed a clean, wide outline for less than a second. Flat, smooth, unfamiliar. No one said anything, but everyone understood. This was not a normal aircraft. The twist was now clear. Venezuela was no longer managing the situation. They were reacting inside a scenario being controlled by someone else. At 12 miles, the warning tone shifted to its sharpest setting. Everyone in the room recognized it. Time was almost gone. From this distance, hesitation could erase any chance to react. Inside the command center, movement slowed to a minimum. An operator called out the range, 12 miles and closing. Another confirmed altitude, still steady, still controlled. There was no sign of retreat. Outside, missile crews stood ready. Systems were live. Indicators were green. One hand rested near the activation switch, close enough to feel the tension. No one spoke. On the radar, the lead aircraft climbed slightly while the second dropped lower. The tracking solution broke again. The system tried to follow both paths and failed. Whatever these aircraft were, they were deliberately stressing the defenses. A short call cut through the silence. "Range update." The answer came back instantly, 11 miles. The officer checked the screen, then repeated the order from headquarters. "Hold fire. Await identification." At 10 miles, the radar brightened for a brief moment. The outline was clearer than before. Wide, smooth, stable. The officer spoke quietly. "Stealth platform." No one questioned it. The distance dropped again. 9 miles. 8. The pressure peaked. Everyone understood that another few miles would leave no room for choice. Then both aircraft shifted together. The lead angled slightly west. The second followed perfectly. The radar struggled, then recovered. The tracks were no longer pointing directly toward defended airspace. For several seconds, the room stayed silent. At 7 miles, the closing stopped. The aircraft slid sideways, calm and controlled, as if the encounter had reached its limit. Missile crews remained in place until the stand-down order came. Systems powered down. The warning tones faded. Nothing had been fired, but the message was unmistakable. This had been a test, and it had been delivered right up to the edge. When the radar tracks finally moved away, there was no celebration inside the command center. No one leaned back. No one smiled. The silence that followed was heavier than the alarms that came before it. Operators stayed at their stations, watching the screen, waiting to be sure the aircraft were truly leaving the area and not setting up for another pass. Outside, missile crews remained in position longer than necessary. Orders to stand down came slowly, step by step. Power levels dropped. Systems cooled. Only then did people begin to relax their shoulders. The sky above the coast stayed dark and empty, giving no hint of what had just happened minutes earlier. From a tactical point of view, Venezuela had avoided a launch. No missiles were fired, no shots were exchanged, but the encounter still delivered a clear result. Their air defense network had been exposed, measured, and tested under real pressure. Reaction times were observed. Tracking limits were revealed. That kind of information cannot be erased once it is gathered. For the US, the message was just as clear. Control does not always require force. Sometimes it only requires presence, timing, and restraint. By pushing close and then disengaging calmly, Washington showed it could reach sensitive airspace, apply pressure, and leave without escalation. No explosion was needed to make the point. This was about more than one night or one radar screen. It was about signaling who sets the tempo in the region. It was about showing that a single move at sea or in the air can trigger responses far beyond its size. And it was a reminder of how close these encounters come to turning into something much larger. The test ended without impact this time. But tests are rarely one-time events. The next encounter may not pause at 7 miles. It may not end with a quiet turn away.